Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Try a Story Tag video for July 2022. This is a video I card out annually in honor of my birthday month. It was a tag started years ago by Jen Campbell, based off of the Try a Chapter tag. You know, the Try a Chapter tag is about taking a few random books and discussing the first chapter and how it works. And this is about taking a few random short story collections and discussing the first story of each collection. And usually I guess the end game is like, you know, which is your favorite and which one will you continue with, or which ones will you continue with, that sort of thing. That's not exactly how I play. This is my collection of 5 short story collections I'm reading from this year, and the top 4 I read from every year. I basically inch through these collections year by year and then keep carding them out. I feel like that could be like a subtitle for my BookTube channel now, basically inching through short story collections, what with these, and then the Dorothy Parker I'm always reading in my Am Reading videos. And then anyway, then this one at top is completely new to the game, and the one that I already expect to continue reading and actually finish this month. That's how I do things. It's kind of like this is the guest star and then these are the old regulars. So anyway, I guess without further ado, I will get into the tag, because I tend to ramble sometimes with these short stories. So this year, in the Vintage Book of Contemporary American Short Stories, edited by Tobias Wolff, I read The Darling by Scott Bradfield. As I was getting into the story, the first thing I was thinking about is sort of, you know, the passive isn't the right word, but it's just such, you know, exposition-y, thought-dumpy sort of writing. I was thinking of it, I guess because I've been reading similar Dorothy Parker short stories lately, and I was trying to interrogate, you know, there's some artfulness to the writing and how he's unfurling the story of Dolores, but that, you know, it's not about, you know, actual interactions between people. There's nothing too dynamic about it. And then it really hit me that that really wasn't what he was trying to do at all with this story. It's not, you know, a serious contemplation of humans, which kind of gets my goat a little. Maybe I'm just not in the right headspace for that sort of thing. This is satire. Dolores is a bit of a serial killer, and the plot is pretty contrived to, you know, give her her victims, which are men that she's involved with, starting with her father. And of course, everything is predicated on abuse. You know, her father abused her, and then, you know, these men she was involved with, they abuse her, or they, you know, also kill people. Like there's a scene in a car where her and her husband, who turns out to bury bodies in the yard that she's later, you know, accused of killing, they're comparing their guns with one another. So anyway, it just seems to be having fun with the idea of this psychobabble and cynicism and I don't know, trying to think, well, what makes a female serial killer, and like putting in all the stops about this sort of abuse and all of this, like, you know, ramble about, like, you know, who are you, as in, like, can you relate to men? Can you relate to women? And, like, she can't relate at all to women, and she just is in these psychobabble, cynical conversations with men. And I don't know, I guess I'm not really taken with that sort of thing. I never liked American Psycho, the movie, or I never read the book. And I'm not just, I don't feel like there's much really clever about it, but I feel like maybe that's, I don't know, my own take. Or maybe I'm speaking from 2022 where other people would agree that sort of thing is dated by now. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there were like lots of like lurid writing in this, like, you know, narrative turns of phrase that could be compelling, but I feel like this one isn't really for me. Next I have Great Short Stories by American Women, edited by Candace Ward, with a somewhat ironic Virginia Woolf, you know, bookmark in it. Anywho, the story I read in this one this year is called The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It's interesting, each of these stories starts with a very brief biography of the woman in question, sort of a whitewashing biography in a certain way. You know, it skimmed or really ignored all of any of Perkins's negative attributes. Because I was curious, I went on to Wikipedia, because this is a very famous short story, and she is a woman of letters with some, you know, backing behind her. And, you know, one of the first things I read on Wikipedia is that she was a eugenicist, and I don't know, I think my assumption is proving correct that when you hear someone's a eugenicist, it means bad things are going to follow, some sense of racial superiority. So anyway, obviously authors are not always good people, but this story is if not a feminist story, I think it really dives into like a very prescient issue of the day, which affected her personally. She suffered from what we would probably now call postpartum depression, and the men in her life, were doctors and or physicians, and they belittled her for it in the way of saying, this isn't real, we don't actually have to treat this as though you're an actual person suffering from symptoms that we have to take seriously. We're just going to lock you in a room and say it's all in your head, and that means that, it's up to you to just sort of shut down your life, and that's certainly going to be mentally, helpful to just sort of live your life in a room. And so the yellow wallpaper, it's also, has the hints of Gothic in it, that it's about this couple and their new baby that rent out an old mansion for a couple of months, and this woman is confined to a nursery with a bolted down, bed, and it's obviously, the signs of being in a room in an asylum sort of thing that her husband is keeping her in, and like so long as she just, stays in that room and acts docile around him, it's like, things are fine. But of course she's slowly going mad in there, it's not helping her at all to, restrict her life to this one room, and then the wallpaper in particular just catches her attention because it's this sickly yellow, and it's all she has to do all day is stare at it. So like as the story goes on, it just gets creepier and creepier to the and by the end of it she's tearing off the wallpaper and consumed with the idea that she has to save a woman trapped inside. So there's a psychological message in there they should be paying attention to, but I don't think they'd interpret it correctly. That's my take. But anyway, yeah, in the vein of these older stories that I seem to be reading lately, this is sort of reportage, passive sort of writing, especially because this is epistolary, really, or that's not technically the right word, because it's diary entries that we are reading as though this narrator is writing them out in stolen moments, because, her husband doesn't actually want her to write, heaven forbid. So in that way, I guess I'm like in the mindset lately of how I'm finding it more difficult to get into these older styles of writing, but with this one, there was definitely a bit of a hook, and you could sort of, and it is sort of this first-person narration, unreliable narrator of, her slowly losing it, and like this wallpaper taking on a really sinister and increasingly sinister edge. Well, we finally got here. We got to the titular story of My First Love Affair and Other Stories by Sholem Aleichem, which was translated from the Yiddish by Kurt Leviant. So the story I am talking about in this section is My First Love Affair, and this one spoke to me more, even though like everything else I've been yammering about, there's sort of a passivity narrative style to this in a way, except I think what Aleichem has is a voice and a theme that just sort of percolates more throughout it, and he sticks to his guns a little bit with that, and I don't know, I find it intriguing. In all honesty, I think this story is like one of the more grounded ones of what I've read from him. But anyway, to get to the point, this also feels like a very stereotypically Jewish sort of love story, romantic story, because it starts out far away from love. It starts out with a city boy being hired to be a tutor to a young pupil, and it is predicated on the fact that the family he is hired into just like exists on lies. Like, as the father is picking him up, the master of the house is picking him up, he spins these long tales about how, extravagant his house is, and, how famous the guests are, and really all of that is overblown. And then he introduces the tutor as, like, someone related to all of these famous people, and, like, the list keeps growing and growing. And then finally his time with his pupil, the tutor and the pupil together, consist of them sitting in a room and basically playing games, and the pupil is happy because when he's with his, the tutor is happy because when he's with his pupil, he eats well. Like, they are a well-off enough family, and so, the tutor is happy for, you know, better food and all of that. And then he gets something even more intriguing, in that his pupil sort of gives over the task of writing letters to his fiancée, you know, because the pupil is not interested in the girl and doesn't seem to like have much of a wit about him. So the tutor takes over writing these letters. The letters are, you know, overwrought in the purple flowery prose sort of way, like, you know, my dear beloved fiance, and going basically into like, you know, how the letters make you feel. The first one, you know, that is a response to the pupil is, you know, your words are really boring me. And so then the tutor really hams it up and, like, you know, has all of these acclamations of love, and they talk a little about literature and other stuff, and, you know, the letters are still really purple, but they're, you know, happy and, you know, supposed to be like, you know, genuinely in love. So basically this is the love affair of the tutor falling in love with his pupil's fiancée through these letters, and he's dreading the wedding in a way, like, you know, this pupil's going to marry the girl of my dreams, and he's, you know, very upset about that, but as the wedding is getting underway, he runs into the bride's tutor, and it turns out that in fact it is the tutor of the bride who was writing all of the letters. So it ends on that note of heartbreak of, you know, no, this was a lie all along, but in a way it's the only way this story could end, because it is a story about, you know, lies, about, you know, the types of lies that people tell themselves, and all throughout the story, everyone the tutor interacts with is telling lies not only to other people but to themselves. So, you know, it's I love the themes. It's very clever the way that, you know, even at the end, after he knows what he got into and he's starting to, you know, lie himself through the letters, and also through like talking, like, you know, lying about his own heritage as well, that he gets duped by it. So I like that theme, although I can't help but wonder, like, if Aleichem was a modern writer, if maybe the story would have ended, instead of with heartbreak, with the two tutors getting together. Although maybe in retrospect that isn't the greatest idea, because that would break the theme. You know, it's all about, you know, it's good for a story to, you know, stay on target in a way. So this ain't no Yentl ultimately, although I guess the thing with the Isaac Bashevis Singer story is that you could skirt around any homoerotic themes by the fact that Yentl is in fact a woman in disguise. Okay, now I'm rambling off topic myself, but yeah, I feel invigorated by this one. My penultimate collection is Oy Caramba, an anthology of Jewish stories from Latin America, edited by Ilan Stavins. And the story in question I read this year is Celeste's Heart, which was written by Aida Bortnik and translated from the Spanish by Alberto Manguel. This is what I would probably call a dashed-off story, what I coined, or, you know, started using a lot with Dorothy Parker. And this is about the length of some of her shorter stories. It's basically just 3 pages. It takes place in a school. Celeste is a young girl who, with her class, is being punished for some punitive reason. The teacher gets mad. She marches the students outside and makes them stand for like an hour or a few class periods, like with their arms outstretched and that they can't move. And around them they see children playing and having fun, and they just are standing there and have to be silent. And so she doesn't complain, or like she like notably is the only person who doesn't complain at all, or, you know, stretch her arms. But then she gets home and her brother talks about wanting to go to school and like being excited for it, and she realizes this could happen to him, and he's so small, and, you know, to have to spend his time like this and the injustice of it. So what she does, the next time the teacher gets mad and marches the students outside, is she refuses to raise her arms, and she gives a bit of a loud speech about just like that this is unjust, or, you know, something like that, and gets a mark in her book, and her parents are proud of her. And then in bed she ruminates about how, you know, your heart grows and leaps and bounds, and it means, like, you know, that you're growing as a person with empathy, or, you know, it's kind of like a didactic kind of story, you know. It's you know, technically speaking, yay for a protagonist who, you know, thwarts some sort of, punitive authoritarianism, but, it's a dashed off, highly narrative, no actual dialogue story. So, it's a nice thing to think about, but in terms of the writing, I don't know if I'd say it's necessarily anything special. I mean, I suppose the end point where she thinks about her heart is supposed to be profound. Maybe a bit too cynical. Good for her for what she did. And finally, we have the story collection I'm going to continue reading after this. This is Udall and Other Stories by Layle Silbert. This was at the top of my Goodreads TBR, so it's like wanting to, dash this off now anyway and finally get this over with. And I'm excited after reading this first story, which was called Birthday Cake, which also feels kind of apropos because in part I'm making this video now in honor of my own birthday month. It's also another kind of dashed off story like the last one, but I feel like the emotions that Silbert is trying to convey are far more complicated. I think it's a difficult sell, I think, because it's rather self-absorbed, but we're following the protagonist. I think her name is Ellen, and she really is going to be the protagonist of the rest of this collection too. And it is her birthday, and she's so overwhelmed, starting with her birthday cake and then going on to the small celebration she and her parents are having, and I think a friend or two. She's just so overwhelmed by it that I think she's seized with this emotion of the transience of life, and just how fleeting things are, and that like she's the center of attention, that her birthday is really important for this one day or this one birthday song, and then it goes away. And you're kind of unimportant again, and maybe one step closer to death. Maybe I'm reaching a bit much with that one, but it feels like there's a sense of transience about like, who am I in the world? We have this one special moment where the spotlight is on you and you matter, and then it's over. And so she's lying in bed and she's terrified and like hallucinating is also probably not the right word, but maybe imagining a bunch of people in like the room with her, and just feeling overwhelmed by life is kind of how I interpreted this, and how her imagination gets away with her, and she's sobbing and like trying to explain to her parents what her emotions are about. So it's a complicated thing to try to express, and it's only 4 pages. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't think if you do much more than 4 pages, it's just too overlong, like you have to get on with life already. But I appreciate, I think, and maybe I'm just wanting to feel optimistic going into reading the rest of this book, but I think that Silbert was actually trying to accomplish something complicated here in terms of emotionality, and in terms of setting up her character, like at this first memorable birthday, I guess, of her life. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm intrigued, and hopefully I will, come out the rest of this collection feeling like that intriguing aspect paid off for the rest of this. Anyway, that's what you always want when starting to read a book. And that finally wraps it up for me now. I've actually been filming this video over a couple of days. I will leave links to the Goodreads pages for all 5 of the short story collections linked down below. Also a link to my short stories playlist, and also for the hell of it, why not the Jewish Book Council review of Udall that attracted me to this book in the first place and had me put it on my TBR. And I will be back imminently on this channel to check in with my current week of reading. A little later than I hoped, because I'm getting this video up a little later than I hoped, but the week has kind of been a bit hectic for me, and on that note, I really should get off this thing anyway and go to bed. So anyway, stay tuned for my AM reading video in the next few days. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.